Hello. I'm making this because I want to talk about a thing I've been working on. It's a tabletop war game and RPG type system. The elevator pitch is as follows. Do you play video games like Squad or Modern Battlefield and wish that all this tactical accoutrement actually did something? Like it feels weird that a Mosin will one-shot anyone in the chest from the front, regardless of if you're a Marine with the best body armor that America can produce, or just some militia fighter with a chest rig and chronic malnutrition? Do you play TTRPGs set in modern times and feel a little disappointed by how most of the time guns don't live up to the function or fantasy that they should? Do you want to get into the nitty gritty details of a modern tactical loadout, but in a pen and paper format? I'm making something for that. Now, if you're interested, I'll get into some of that nitty gritty. What I'm designing is a very technical, gear-focused tabletop combat and character system that blends the long-term character development of a classic RPG with the tactical nuance and depth of a war game or skirmish-style tabletop system. Think something like XCOM with long-form character development across a campaign with wins, close calls, and heartbreaking sudden defeats, but with Tarkov's gun and gear pedantry nestled in. To give you a taste of that detail, I'll talk about one of my favorite topics of the system: firearms. Now, the way that most games implement firearms is, in my eyes, somewhat lackluster and ingenuine to the reality of firearms in a modern sense, as well as violating the fantasy of what people that are familiar with the systems imagine when they picture how a gun would perform. It either ends up being basically just a reskinned bow in order to fit into pre-existing Dungeons and Dragons type systems, or it goes the Warhammer route where the only difference between any given firearm or platform is whether you hit on fours or fives and if it does 2 or 3 mortal wounds on hits, because the system isn't designed around a high level of granularity. Before I bite into it, I want to disclaim something first. Those systems work. They fit the flow and the design of the rest of the game, and trying to get more technical with them would break the gameplay up too much for what the original design of the game is and trade for a level of accuracy or immersion that does not fit tonally. I'm not saying they're bad systems, I just have something currently undiagnosed and crave a deeper level of technical and tactical nuance. In my system, there's so much that goes into combat, because in reality there is a lot going on. Let's look at just the basic typical gun in modern use, an M4A1, as fielded by the US Army until they eventually get around to replacing it with the M14 2.0. It shoots bullets, those bullets do damage. Before we get into the gun, let's look at what it fires. Let's look at those bullets. Also, if this is starting to get a little bit on the technical side or too into the weeds, final warning, it gets worse from here. An M4A1 fires 5.56 by 45 millimeter ammo, which is classed as light intermediate in my system. Those 5.56 rounds have two components, the projectile and the powder load. The projectile is the actual bullet that leaves the gun and impacts the target, so it's what does damage, and its characteristics influence the performance you get. There are 4 types of projectiles. The first one is ball, basic lead core and a copper jacket. It's barely better than a rock, but it'll still poke holes in people in light cover. The second type is Full Metal Jacket, or FMJ for short. This is a higher quality of round, but still simplistic. It's your gold standard munitions. Also, for my fellow special interest individuals, I know ball and FMJ are synonymous. However, I wanted to have a differentiation between civilian and light military grade ammo. If you're familiar, imagine ball is Wolf or Tula, where it's a 223 loading in a poor quality projectile, and FMJ is something like your IMI or your X-TAC, where it's M193, it's a 5.56 spec, and it's a higher quality standard. Your third type is your armor piercing, or AP. This is solid lead core, but it's augmented by a hardened metallic penetrator to better pass through armor and hard cover. Pretty standard. The last type that I have is hollow point, or HP. This is expanding tip ammunition, typically used for hunting and self-defense. It trades armor penetration for raw damage output. Simple enough. And that's just the projectile. Bear in mind that these different projectiles exist for almost every caliber and platform. After that, there's the second part of the cartridge, the actual powder loading, or just the load. There's 5 load types. Those load types are standard pressure, which is your standard loading for standard use. It is the standard. It's in the name. It does what it says on the tin. Then we have plus pressure, which is an increased pressure from the standard, which increases your velocity and effective range, at a slight detriment to your weapon failures. Third, we have overpressure, which is exceptionally hot rounds, significantly increasing velocity and effective range at, again, the cost of worsening weapon failures. Then, going the opposite direction, we have under pressure, which is a reduced pressure loading. It makes it a little harder to hit moving or faraway targets, but there are use cases for it. Lastly, we have subsonic, which is so little powder that the projectile does not break the sound barrier. Exceptionally quiet when suppressed, but drastically reduces your effective range and makes moving targets even harder to hit. Pretty self-explanatory. The combination of powder load and projectile are represented by a basic letter string. APSP means armor-piercing standard pressure. HPSS means hollow point subsonic. Ball plus P means ball plus pressure, so on and so forth. Now, I know this sounds spooky and like it's a lot, but most of this is really fire and forget once you get it set up, and I feel really helps enhance kind of the granular nature of what I'm going for. Also, I mentioned light intermediate caliber class. What does that mean? I'm glad I asked. Damage isn't based on just a roll of the dice. It's not just 2d6 plus X, because that rarely lives up to the fantasy of the actual effect of guns in practice. Damage is based on caliber and projectile type, so that 5.56 round would perform comparably to its contemporary calibers, such as 5.45. It won't hit as hard as your, say, 7.62 NATO. It'll still do more than 9 mil. So, we know that the cartridge as a total package has an influence on gameplay and performance, but I haven't talked about the gun itself and how that M4A1 we started with comes into play. I mentioned how your ammo can influence the range, but that range is a number determined primarily by the platform the bullet is fired from and also by the caliber that the platform is chambered for. Ideal range, or just range for short, is the bracketed closest and farthest distances that you will perform at an optimal level with the firearm. For a given AR platform like our M4A1, it's by default 10 to 100 feet. Now, again, for my fellow special interest individuals, I know that sounds way too short. It's been reduced for gamification purposes, but if you want to, at the end of the day, you can modify it until your brainworms are happy as well. For my purposes, I'll remind you that it's ideal range and not just range, despite the abbreviation. If you're engaging targets closer than 10 or past 100, you can still absolutely land effective shots on target, just like you would if you were an actual trained rifleman doing flat range drills on cardboard. The ideal part just means that if you are outside of the specified distances, you suffer minor debuffs to accuracy and reaction time. You can extend the maximum range with things like magnified optics and higher pressure ammo, which allow you to reach out farther. Or you can bring the minimum closer with short range optics, or even reclass it with a different assembly for the upper to give yourself a SPR or PDW. But we'll stick to the assault rifle class for now. Again, now we know that the cartridge and base platform both come into play regarding range and damage. What more is there? So much more. Weapon failure is influenced by ammo pressure and gas setting for the system, the ballistic performance versus armor, accuracy, stray shots, shotguns, precision weapon systems, night fighting, and so much more from there even, each with its own string of rabbit holes to wander down. This is a project I've been working on for some years now, close to a decade all in all. And once I get it to where I'm happy with it, I'm going to look at publishing it for free if there's enough interest. Here's a final note for that, though. One might wonder who I'm making this for, especially if I mention publishing it. Who is the target audience for such a noxiously involved, pedantically detailed, long-winded system that takes forever to set up a single character when there's always the chance of just getting schwacked round one? It's me. I'm making this for me. If years down the line, after release or project death, I'm the only one playing with this system, setting up little maps and fighting imaginary mouse skirmishes, I'll still be happy. Target audience has 100% satisfaction. I'm planning on sharing it in case anyone is interested in the idea. Whether it's popular or DOA, I like what I've got, and that's enough for me. If you've gotten this far, thank you for your time. Leave a like on the video to express interest in the project and share with anyone else that might be intrigued. Keep an eye out for any updates if this does pick up any. Thank you. Also, editing me here. Just realized I hadn't actually said what I'm calling this system. I'm calling it OpFOR. OpFOR being a reference to the adversary unit used by U.S. Armed Forces for training, as well as being a reference to a adversary in the campaign that I'm running for test group. Probably some kind of spoilers for y'all, but if you're here, you get that one for free. Thanks for watching the video and support.